I don't know many of you have kept up with the migrant caravan. We've talked a little bit about it on the show, but not quite as much as some others have. I guess to some degree, Rev, they're storming the border. There's been some DEA agents and law enforcement personnel along the border that has sprayed some tear gas.
Well, where rocks were thrown by the...
Rocks and bottles, both.
Okay, so what's the difference between a migrant and an illegal immigrant?
There's some terminology difference there. I'd say, to be honest, nothing. By definition, there's a difference.
Yeah.
But in this migrant caravan, there is nothing. I just don't know how the left believes this is good for the country. And maybe they don't. They just don't speak out as adamantly opposed to it as the Republicans do. It's hard for me to believe that you can't support a lawful, orderly way to enter the country. I think that's a discreet way of saying I'm an open borders kind of person. I went back and looked at Pew Research. I knew I'd seen this a couple of months ago because they're trying to give the appearance that we don't want immigrants in this country. You know, the Republicans just don't want immigrants entering into the country. I want to give you some statistics. You know, facts are stubborn things. I mean, the media spins a narrative one way. Politicians spin it another way. If you're on the left, your narrative is spun consistent with the way the media is trying to spin it. It's a bunch of angry white guys in the Republican Party who don't want to share prosperity with anybody in the world. I mean, in essence, that's kind of the narrative that is being regurgitated all over the media. The United States has more immigrants than any other country in the world. Let me say that again. The United States has more immigrants than any other country in the world. Today, more than 40 million people living in the United States were born in another country. That's about 22% of all immigrants or migrants in the world. Let's go through some statistics. Since 1965, when U.S. immigration laws replaced a national quota system, the number of immigrants living in the United States has more than quadrupled. Immigrants today account for about 13.5% of the U.S. population. That's nearly triple what it was in 1970 when it was only 4.7%. There are about 33.8 million lawful immigrants. There are about 11 million unauthorized immigrants. I think this is interesting. 1.4 million immigrants come from El Salvador. 1.9 million come from the Philippines. 2.4 million come from India. 2.7 million come from China. 11.6 million come from Mexico. So we don't have an immigration problem. We've got I'll go back and say it again. We've got an invasion problem with the nation of Mexico. All of these others, 1.4 million, 1.9 million, 2.4 million, 2.7 million, are very much in line. I mean, you got Europeans at about 1.1 million, and then you've got Mexico at 11.6 million. And once again, these are just stats. I'm not trying to tell you what you need to believe. I'm just giving you some information. And this is very random and sporadic, but I think it's very interesting. The percentage of women giving birth in the past year was higher among immigrants than among U.S.-born women. In fact, 7.4% of women who are immigrants gave birth to a child last year. Only about 5% of U.S.-born women gave birth to a child, while U.S.-born women gave birth to over 3 million children. Immigrant women gave birth to 750,000. I mean, think of the numbers there. I mean, there's a disparity there. Obviously, we don't have as many immigrant women in the country, but there's still, 750,000 children a year. U.S.-born women, only about 3 million. This is very interesting to me. We're talking about, how it skews the workplace, the marketplace of employment. All U.S.-born citizens with less than a high school degree. Red, what percentage of U.S.-born citizens have less than a high school degree?
30.
9%.
Oh.
9% of all U.S.-born citizens have less than a high school degree. 29% of all foreign-born citizens have less than a high school degree. These are ages 25 and older. South and East Asia, only about 15% have less than a high school degree. The Middle East, only about 13% have less than a high school degree. In Europe and Canada, they grouped these together, kind of the Western cultures, only about 11% have less than a high school degree. Here we go now. Stick with me. Central America, 49% of immigrants coming to America from Central America have less than a high school degree. 57% of the Mexican immigrants have less than a high school degree. I mean, I hear them arguing about merit-based, immigration all the time. We're allowing people to come in here. And then, look, corporate America's behind this. I mean, it's to create an imbalance in the supply and demand of cheap labor. I mean, we've got an immigration policy in America. You've heard me say that over and over again. The Democrats believe they'll ultimately vote for their side. The Republicans believe that they'll keep labor markets very skewed and down. And that's why we've not seen a lot of economic prosperity amongst the American working class, is because of the number of unskilled workers who don't have a high school diploma have been allowed to legally and illegally enter into the country. See, I would make a prerequisite. I mean, if you're coming to America, one of the requirements, you got to have a high school degree. That's a requirement. Well, you can't do that. I mean, that's exclusionary. That's hateful. That's discriminatory. No, that's called merit-based education. The people who say education's the key. And see, I've got a lot of liberals, and this is where I catch them, and they really don't have an answer. They'll run around the world saying education's the key. Now, I don't know what the hell they mean when they say that, but they say education's the key. And then I'll say, well, let's do something about immigration. Let's put together a merit-based immigration system that makes education a priority. No, you can't do that. That's discriminatory. But you just said education's the key. So if we want a better country and economy, why are we letting all of these uneducated people into our country? Well, we're giving them opportunity. No, that's inconsistent with reality. So let's look at that number.
You can't
again.
argue with liberals with logic.
You can't. I mean, it's an emotional condition. But I want to go back again. 9% of U.S.-born citizens have less than a high school degree. 57% of immigrants coming from Mexico have less than a high school degree. Do you believe that's good or bad for your country? Let's go to English proficient. In 1980, 57% of all immigrants, foreign-born immigrants, were English proficient. Guess what it is today, Rev? 41%. Immigrants from, here we go again, Mexico have the lowest rates of English proficiency, 32%, followed by Central America, 33%, South and East Asia, 54%, Europe or Canada, 76%, the Middle Eastern countries, 61%. So nobody, when the Asians come here, they become English proficient. When the Europeans come here, they become very English proficient. When the Canadians migrate to America, they make as a priority becoming English proficient. The ones that don't, for whatever reason, are the ones that come from Mexico. Once again, I'm not trying to pass judgment on a group of people. I'm not trying to paint with that broad. I'm just giving you facts. And once again, Pew Research does as good a job as anybody at not being political in their assimilating of data. 43% of immigrants in the United States today speak in their home as their primary language Spanish. When you're in Rome, you do as the Romans do. See, I think that should be a requirement. You must have a high school degree, and you must be English proficient. I mean, the left will say, well, that's just discriminatory. I mean, that's not offering a certain subset of people the opportunity they so deserve. I mean, they want to come here and make a better way. Okay, you want to come here and make a better way? Do some things on your part. Attain a high school degree and become English proficient. Is that unreasonable, Reb?
I don't think it is.
I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable at all, but that's where the left pushes back against this because
they're crazy.
You said that. The number of immigrants who speak English only, 16%, Chinese only, 6%, Hindi, 5%, Filipino, 4%, and French, 3%. You see where I'm headed here? I mean, the people that come from France make as their primary spoken word English. The people who come here from the Philippines, they learn English. The people that come here from China, they learn English. The people that come here from Canada, they learn English. I know they speak a version of French. It's kind of French-English, kind of a hybrid. The people who come from Mexico and Central America, guess what they do? They keep speaking Spanish. They don't have much of an interest in being English proficient, and the stats, once again, prove that to be the case. This is very interesting from a political perspective. We got a lot of different views by politically affiliated. Amongst Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents, 84% think immigrants strengthen the country with their hard work and talents. That's an astounding number. I mean, 84% of Democrats are pretty cool with the way things are. with immigration. They'd probably rather just not have any sort of immigration authority, and open borders would be something they more ascribe to. Among Republicans and Republican-leaning independents, roughly 44% say immigrants are a burden, as many say immigrants strengthen the country because of their hard work and talent. In other words, the Republicans are fairly split. Once again, 44% say they are a burden on the political and financial systems of our country. 42% say they add great value with their works and talents. Only 16% of Democrats believe they're a burden. There's a political story and a political narrative here. When I look at merit-based immigration, and that's really what we're debating now, and this migrant caravan that has made its way across Mexico and got to the border and began, I don't know, just causing chaos. And we've got some law enforcement authorities on the border managing that affair as best they know how. It's just interesting to me that when you begin down the road of, okay, what sort of immigration policy do you want? I think people in the Republican Party have been very specific. It's been outlined. It's been fairly well defined. They're not perfect. I mean, there's some things that they've got some disagreement. I think Lindsey Graham is more of an amnesty guy. He doesn't want to try to round up 11 million people. I'm kind of that. I don't know that I'm an amnesty guy, but I don't see how you would round up 11 million people. I don't think it's worth the energy and effort necessary or it would take to be successful in that endeavor. But you've got, I think some reasonable perspectives and opinions in the Republican Party. One of those being kind of a merit-based immigration plan. Let's not allow but so many people who are not educated into the country. And Rev, this goes to the fundamental debate of immigration. Who does the country belong to? I think the country belongs to its citizenry. I mean, it belongs to you and me and Alec and all the Republicans and Democrats trying to make a better way. Or does it belong to the world? And when you start down the road of saying, okay, as a priority in immigration, I don't think we should let anybody in this country who doesn't have a high school degree and is not proficient in English. The left will call you a hate monger and somebody who denies the opportunities that you have so enjoyed and been blessed and fortunate with to not have that same experience, to which I just simply respond, no, there's just a couple of checks you got to put in the box before you want to come to America. Interesting question was asked of a Mexican politician. One day last week, I was watching kind of an odd political show that I watch every now and then. I think it's on this crazy liberal Democracy Now!, I think is the name of the show, and it's on one of the off-the-wall channels. I mean, it's only on DirecTV, and it's odd, but it's interesting to me every now and then. But they were asking a Mexican authority, if you catch somebody in your country who is illegal, what do? We send them back to their homeland. I mean, we don't let them stay in the country. There's certain things they've got to do to come into Mexico. Why are we looked at any differently as it relates to immigration authority and management? It's just a very interesting debate. Once again, I'm not giving those statistics, trying to tell you what we should or shouldn't do with immigration. I'm just telling you this. The people that migrate to America from Asia, by and large, assimilate. They learn the language, and they become educated. The majority of people who come from Europe, there's a fairly consistent theme. You know what they do? They assimilate. They learn the language, and they are at least high school educated. The problem we have in this country with immigration is all about Mexico. It's not about Canada. It's not about Europe. It's not about Asia. It's not about France. It's not about Poland. I mean, those people come and they assimilate. They become what? Americans. The Mexican population, and I want to go back to what I think is the key number. I think these are reasonable, very reasonable numbers when you say, 1.4 from El Salvador, million, 1.9 million from the Philippines, 2.4 million from India, 2.7 million from China. I mean, China's got 1.5 billion people, and only 2.7 million migrate to America. They desire to be an American citizen. They come educated and they come English proficient. And then you've got 11.6 million that come from Mexico. And once again, 43% of people that migrate from Central America and Mexico, guess what? They speak as their primary language of that household Spanish. That's not assimilating. I'm not saying you can't speak Spanish. Please don't misunderstand that. I'm just saying immigration is a two-way street. There's a process of which we afford people all over the world to become a citizen. There are things you must do to benefit from becoming an American citizen, and the left in America today does not want to honor the system we've implemented and put in place. They want the Wild Wild West. I mean, they really do as it relates to immigration.